Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cloud Lunch and Learn session. I'm your host Elhan today, and we have a very interesting session from duo of speakers, which is not always the case, but it's going to be a very interesting and engaging session about agile and flexibility and all these important things that we need to have in place to drive the innovation and as well as the continuous feedback of our customers into the products and projects where we are trying to bring the value to our customers. And without any overdue, I want to invite to the studio our guests, Ivan and Sarah, and they're actually joining from a different, I would say, location of the world, right? So one of them, the Sarah, is joining from Philadelphia, here on the East Coast, which is not far away from my place, by the way. And we have Ivan, he's joining from Berlin, Germany. So let's welcome them into the studio. Hi, Ivan. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks.
It's great and big pleasure to see you both here on this session, on this Cloud Lunch and Learn event. And you are bringing a very exciting topic, a very important one. So do you want to say anything before we start and jump into the session?
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Exactly. Let's jump right in, and we have a
Okay,
lot to say later.
great. Yeah, there's a lot to share. So yeah, without any overdue, let's bring up the slides here, and all floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our session today as we crash into Agile.
Yes, and then from my side, once again, I'm Ivan. I'm based in Berlin, engineering leader with already 15 plus years in software engineering. Also, last 5 or even 5 plus years, I jumped into engineering management, which I do really passionately and with a lot of enthusiasm, I would say. My focus is on building and scaling high performing teams. Agile is my big topic as well. I'm really excited to talk, to share, to exchange about agile topics. That's why we are actually partially here today. And yeah, I'm enjoying things like this public talks and exchange. That's what I do very gladly. And today we'll show how Agile pairs with Lean Six Sigma. And with that, Sarah, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Wimberly. I'm based in Philadelphia, and I'm the principal and founder of Ulster Technologies, primarily supporting nonprofits and small organizations through process improvement and organizational transformation. I've been in the healthcare technology space for the last 15 years or so, with about a decade before that in the marketing industry. And really, I guess I enjoy speaking about the intersections of those spaces along with managing and leading people. So today's session is a kind of an interesting blend of all those topics. So where Ivan's going to focus on the Agile space, I'm going to focus more on the Lean Six Sigma and process improvement space as our talk progresses today. And we'll dive in.
Exactly. I'll take over this one. So we want to talk first about the perceived divide, right? What do we think about when we talk about Agile, and what when we talk about Lean Six Sigma? So, and at first look, of course, this looks like two completely that these two concepts are completely on different sides, right? When we talk about Agile, we talk about speed, we're talking about embracing change and dynamic and so on. On the other hand, when we talk about Lean Six Sigma, we talk about stability, right? We talk about data-driven approach. Something which at first look, and not only at first look, it looks like a bit more, no, a bit less dynamic and so on. So they seem like opposite sides at first, right? But we try to, rather than seeing them black and white or completely separate, we try to find a shared goal for these two approaches. And we were, as we at least think that we could find that. And we talk about shared goal after all, right? We talk about continuous improvement, about delivering measurable business value. That it's all about that, right? And we, with this presentation, we will try to how should I say, to break this myth, so that they do not have to be on the opposite sides. Will somehow blend them in some different layers when they can not exclude each other, but rather blend in and rather complement each other. So yeah, we will talk about these layers with measuring, iterating, controlling, and then finally getting to speed, but with stability. And that's the entire focus. So we already mentioned that Agile comes with cadence, with feedback, with learning fast. And on the other hand, we have baselines control, but with improvements that will stick at the end, right? And this so-called, as we call it, known unknown, how we combine them effectively, we will talk about that today. And with the next slide, we will talk first about strengths from each framework. Exactly. Thanks, Sarah. So on the left-hand side, we picked like four bullet points. What are the strengths of each approach, right? So when we talk about Agile, I mentioned part of it. We talked about adaptability, about flexibility, and fast feedback cycles. So this one is quite important, but the fourth one also. Actually, when I'm looking at them right now, they're all important. So we have fast feedback cycles. We had empowered and self-organizing teams. This is extremely important. We try to what means we? People that want to work agile, to go bottom up and not top bottom, right? So we want self-organizing teams and team members, something that comes from bottom, something that comes from individuals, right? And now I'm jumping to the fourth topic that I also mentioned, like as quite important: incremental value delivery. In Agile, it's all about these small values, small incremental values that we bring with every iteration, with every cycle, whatever it is. It might be, I don't know, 1 week. It might be 4. A lot of teams work with 2 week sprints and so on. But it's always about what is the value that we brought in this period, whatever it is, from 1 to 4 weeks. Yeah, let's have a look now what stands on the right hand side.
Yep. So thanks, Ivan. So for Lean Six Sigma, there's a similar, framework strengths. It really starts with that data-driven decision-making approach, where you are approached with a problem, or maybe there's an idea on a way to improve an existing process, but it's all driven by data. So it doesn't mean that feedback is not important. Where Agile thrives on that fast feedback cycle, Lean is looking more at the data, not to the point where you're discounting the feedback, but definitely focus on the data and the hard values and concrete analysis that comes out of that. Really under the guise and in the hope of improving process stability and precision, getting to the root cause of that problem. So dealing with the originating issue, not just the symptoms of a problem. So you're not necessarily just mitigating risk, you're resolving it at the start so that it ceases to exist all in its entirety. And broadly speaking, Lean, as a general practice, is aims to reduce waste and improve efficiency through every step, every decision that's made, every process improvement, little by little, is intending to reduce the variations in that process to make the process stronger and more efficient.
Yes, let's now talk about. Let's talk about both approaches, but in a nutshell, what say so a bit more in detail. So actually, I mentioned this already, but it's not bad to underline it again. Small, frequent increments, inspect with customers. That's actually we didn't mention that yet, but that's why we do anything we do, right? So I'm coming from software engineering background, so of course I'm talking about mostly about building software and so on. It's on the other end is always customers. So that's why we do and deliver all these frequent increments. So it's very important to have this feedback as soon as possible from your customer, whatever customer is. So you can sometimes your customer is really user of your, I don't know, mobile app or your web app, but sometimes your customer is simply within your organization. So stakeholders and so on. So when we say customer in this case, it doesn't have to be like so strictly defined, right? Customer is simply, or we can say simply users. I love how Jeff Sutherland in his book The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. This is like a Scrum Bible and so on. He said something like, he also mentioned that customers are from can be different individuals, either stakeholder. And he said, okay, if you're organizing a wedding, for example, for your private purpose, then customer is your wife, right? So I'm just joking aside, I'm just trying to say in different contexts, customer means also has different meaning, right? And then once again, adapt and improve in every iteration, right? I really wanted in the heart of this slide is a so-called Agile manifesto, right? There are like 4 simple bullet points, and there was a bunch of guys some years ago. I'm please don't get me here. I think between 10 and 20 years ago, that sat together as software engineers and then came up. They even literally signed this paper where they brainstormed what do we as software engineers want to, how do we want to work, right? And that's how this Agile manifesto came to this world, if I may say. So the first point here says individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? So my personal take on this is like it is really talking about human side other than tools, right? By the way, we have later one slide specifically talking about human side, so that is matching quite well. And then the next point is quite special for me and Zara because the second one says working software over comprehensive documentation. And why is this special? This topic is actually the meeting, the how should I say the meeting point, if I may say like that. Sarah was presenting actually some months ago in Chicago at a conference. If I'm not wrong, Sarah, that was about change management, right?
Yeah, I was.
And when there was QA time, I raised my hand, and because there was some topic was also in Sarah's slide about documentation and so on, and I literally asked these questions. This question: how do you take this one from Agile Manifesto? Literally, this bullet point: working software over comprehensive documentation. And that's how it all. I received an answer. I'm not sure if I was back then happy with it. But that's how it all started. Then we met right after her nice presentation, and we talked about this specific bullet point, but also about other touching points. And fast forward to now, that's how we came up with this. Let's call it our approach, even though if you Google it or use Perplexity nowadays to find about it, there is actually a lot of documentation about this. But to be honest, when we were talking, when we were having work in progress with this topic, we were not aware that if there is something out there or not. Anyway, let's move forward. The third topic, the third bullet point is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So I also somehow my personal take on it is again seeing a bit more human side and being social human beings, right? So customer collaboration always is winning over contract negotiation. And finally the fourth one, and in this context, of course, the most important one: responding to change over following a plan. So I'm repeating once again: responding to a change over following a plan. That is all what Agile is about. So, but of course, there are certain lines with it. Maybe we talk about it later or not, because if you embrace every single change, then where is this line? Where is this? I mean, where is this line? Where is this now agile or chaos, right? So, and that I tried with this last line on this slide. To say agile isn't no plan, but it's plans that change with evidence. So that's a bit a nicer definition, right? So let us quickly talk about frameworks and when to use it, right? So you all heard about Scrum, right? Um, is there a question, Dimitri?
Hi, Ivan. Yeah, thank you for that. Going bullet by bullet. We have a question on the studio from Frederick Hawkinson. So I'll bring his question. These are very important topics, and he is more interested to hear from you. Like, what are the top three books in this each subject that you would recommend to the viewers?
That's a very good question. So I will directly. I already quoted this book. That's the godfather of Scrum. I'll even show it. That's not. You cannot see it very well. That's fine. That says the art of doing twice the work in half the time. The writer is Jeff Sutherland, and he's co-creator of Scrum. So this is like a Bible of Scrum, if you will. I have to take. So for now, with my fast working mind, I'll for now go only with this book. But I want to add something to this. You will find nowadays on LinkedIn and different social platforms people that will, of course, say, "Hey, Scrum is too old school. Scrum is not modern anymore. Scrum," and you will find even Scrum is not agile anymore. So there is a lot of every single day on LinkedIn. You can find it. I can also maybe I will not give you three books, but I will give you a guide to follow if you want to go hardcore agile. The guy is called Alan Holub. The guy based in California, of course. He will tell you, no, Scrum is not agile anymore. That's too old school. Now we work only extreme programming. Now we do only mob programming and do everything so agile. But my take on this, it depends. Your organization. We are not all working in Silicon Valley companies, right? In Silicon Valley, fancy startup companies. So me personally, for me, Scrum works. So, and the organization where I work, it doesn't mean that it will work in every organization. I will, Sarah. Do you want to add your points later, or do you want to jump in right now?
I guess I'll hold my book recommendations for the next slide when I talk about.
All right.
So yeah, but thank you.
All right. I will quickly. So I mentioned. I already mentioned actually framework Scrum and XP Extreme Programming. There are frameworks like Safe, like Kanban. We can actually discuss about it. Is it even agile or not? But depends. I think agile. Let's make a line here. Agile is actually more of a mindset, or if you want, even a philosophy, how we do things. And these are only frameworks. And as I said, if Alan Holub is saying Scrum is not agile, but we can still somehow still have agile mindset anyway, right? What is important is iterative delivery and continuous improvement. And Sarah, we are going to next slide. I will just last thing from this slide, when to use it. And that's actually a bit matching with this. Hey, we are not all working in those fancy Silicon Valley companies. I'm sorry. So, but when to use it, fast changing context, evolving customer needs, and projects where incremental value is essential. So we basically talked about all this, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it once again. So with this, I hope I managed to keep this in a nutshell, more or less. And Sarah, over to you.
All right, thanks. So we'll go through a little bit of the similar kind of foundational fundamentals on the Lean Six Sigma side. And as cheesy as it is, I too have a framework book right next to me. This is 2 decades old, but I still use it on a regular basis. It's the Six Sigma Memory Jogger 2, and it's a pocket guide of the tools. There are a lot of books out there on these topics that kind of cover the bases, but for Lean Six Sigma and as well as Agile, I know there's certifications and kind of formal letters after your name you can garner if you so choose. And in Lean Six Sigma, those are belts. So if you're familiar with karate, as cheesy as that is, there's different colored belts as you kind of get more experience and more knowledge and of a deeper understanding and application of the fundamentals of Lean Six Sigma. If that's something you're interested in doing, there's handbooks and guides that kind of guide you in that way. Toolbooks that actually break down the DMAIC principles, which I'll go through at a high level, as well as examples and kind of details on the different kind of tools of analysis and things of that nature. So there's a lot of resources out there. Not all of them are great, but it's great to hear that folks are interested in kind of digging in a little deeper on these topics. So, but from Lean Six Sigma, kind of in a nutshell, similar to Agile, there are key principles, which we've kind of already covered a little bit, but the top three for Lean are waste reduction, process stability, and precision. And when it comes to waste reduction, this is really that systematic identification and elimination of any or all of the 8 known wastes in the Lean world. And this could be things like defects, where there's actually errors or issues, overproduction, which harkens back to the early manufacturing applications of Lean Six Sigma, waiting, or non-utilized or underutilized talent and people resources. And then again, with manufacturing, early days and origins, transportation, logistics, inventory, things like that are really just process lags or disconnects that could be optimized. Ultimately, to reduce costs, improve quality, and improve customer satisfaction. When it comes to process stability, we're really looking at how we can consistently deliver predictable and repeatable outputs. So over the course of the lifetime of a process, whether that's a system process, a people process, how frequently is that process at 100%? Or how close to 100% can we get? In Lean, there's the exponential millionth of a 1% quality metric that everyone is striving toward in the process improvement space. Sometimes that's not realistic, but the goal of process improvement in Lean is to get as close to that as possible for the longest amount of time as possible. And this is where that precision comes in, where you have as little to no variation in the process so that it is consistent and repeatable over the lifetime of that, so that the tolerance of the variance from a data perspective is as small and as tight as possible. So Lean Six Sigma really works best when you're taking into account these 3 big kind of aspects. So personas, which is more of a marketing term based on my experience, but really is your customers, your end users and your stakeholders. So if you consider how different groups of people in that process are interacting with the process, whether that's an end user, so if you're in these software development arena, your actual end users of a web app, or your internal customer service agents, or even your IT people as they're supporting an application. All of those are different personas of a particular process, and understanding how they need to interact with the process, whether they're the beginning, the end, the middle, or frequently throughout the process, is really important as we're starting to better understand how Lean can support or improve that process. And this is where value stream mapping kind of intentionally provides that indirect customer engagement to understand where those features impact those personas along the way. Lean, we've mentioned it, data-driven decisions 100%. So where Agile might be changing along the way, Lean is very intentional on gathering way more, nearly 100% of the information up front to then make a decision and move forward. Less change and less iterations along the way, but much more intentional decision making based on that data. All under the not guise per se, but all leveraging that root cause analysis. So you're asking the questions and you're getting to the bottom of the issue at the beginning before development takes place, so that the development time you're investing is quality and the best advantage and to the best use of everyone's time as much as humanly possible. So the DMAIC process overall has five kind of segments of time. The acronym is DMAIC, and that stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And throughout this process, there's artifacts that are ideal, or maybe, just solid examples of kind of the outputs that might come out of the exercises in that particular phase. And I'll go through them and kind of share some examples here. So when it comes to the define phase, this is really where we're defining the problem. We're identifying what we're actually trying to fix or improve or realize, and then understand what the customer and end users' requirements are, or even what value they'll get out of it. So this could come in from user indirect customer feedback, direct customer feedback. This could be the self-actualization of the Agile team lifting up an idea to improve their own internal processes. All of that is fair game when it comes to what could be potentially in scope for a Lean Six Sigma improvement process. So things along the lines that you might be doing in a define phase, we might be writing a project charter, which much to Ivan's chagrin is documentation. And I would argue that you heckled me, not just asked your question, but we can come back to that later. So you might be drafting a project charter, scope and goals, or even a current state SIPOC. And a SIPOC, for those of you who don't necessarily know, a SIPOC, SPIOC, is a 5-column chart, essentially. I've done it on a whiteboard with stickies or even a Visio diagram, documenting your suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers. So this is really walking through your stakeholders. Well, I'll actually go this way for you guys. So walking through your stakeholders, what materials, data, staffing, your inputs might be, the processes in the center, step 1 through N, however many you might need to properly document current state. The outputs, so those products and services, whether that's a data pipeline output, a web app, whatever the end goal is that's interacting with your customers, whether they're internal or external at the very end, that last 5th column there. So once we have a better understanding and a refined definition of what we're trying to accomplish with the project, essentially, we'll move into measure. And this is where we are digging into the data. This is where most of the analysis is coming in. You might spend the most of your time after defining the problem. This is probably the section of the process that you spend the most amount of energy and effort, because this is really going to define the rest of the analyze, improve, and control phases. So we might be looking at something like volume of errors, how many times this process is running, where the defects are happening and how frequently, where the pain points are in the SIPOC. So leveraging that diagram that we just built and defining or identifying what steps are failing in a more tangible way. And then even all the way through to reporting. How are we measuring the process? How are we measuring quality? How are we measuring defects? And in this phase, you might be using something like a Pareto chart or histogram to visually map out those things, acknowledging that everyone in your team might learn and understand data differently. So while some folks might be totally comfortable looking at, color coding in Excel, people like me, visual, that histogram is going to give us a lot more information than numbers in a spreadsheet. Once we have a better understanding of the frequency of the problem, how big of a deal it is, especially if you're comparing or needing to decide how many between multiple problems to fix, you can move into the analyze phase. So we'll review the data that you found, identify root causes, work all the way back. So maybe we've seen the symptoms in our measurement phase. Now we need to dig back into the root cause and actually start to think through what might be potential hypothesis that we would want to test and verify impact on for this process. And this is where some things like a scatter diagram or a cause and effect diagram, where we're actually mapping out in a visual way where our hypotheses might land and how we might be able to improve the process. And then we'll move into the improve phase and generate those ideas. So this is where the ideation really happens, I guess, and maybe more the fun part, where we're actually working to solution and fix the problem. So we'll work collectively, hopefully with a cross-functional team, might even include your stakeholders or some of your end users in this process. But we'll actually work to generate ideas to fix the problems and then implement the improvements one at a time. which is, I know, very painful for people who love to deliver a lot fast. But delivering one thing at a time is the best way to really understand the impact and the value of the thing you just changed, and then also not necessarily inadvertently impact something and go backwards. So outputs in the improve phase could be some things like an FMEA, which is a failure mode effect analysis, or even a prioritization matrix, which if you have a lot of ideas could be really helpful in partnering with your stakeholders or your team members to come up with criteria, weight the criteria, and then essentially vote to determine which improvements you work on first. And then last, but certainly not least, because control and monitoring is a critical part of Lean Six Sigma as well. This is where we are really monitoring the new process. So as we're implementing one change at a time, we're keeping a close eye on the data to make sure that we're not slipping back into a wider breadth of tolerance, and the data is really moving in the way we want it to, or the way we're expecting to. And outputs here could be a new SIPOC. As we're making those changes, we're updating those 5 columns, or even a PDCA, which is a plan, do, check, act cycle and process. So you've done Lean right when the data is showing you that you're moving towards a higher quality process. Your customers, even if it's indirectly, will hopefully be more engaged and happier about the outcome. But Lean, especially compared to Agile, is a little bit slower and far more methodical, but still really valuable in and of itself if you use it as a standalone process. So we will move into kind of a brief comparison here between the two. So we've already mentioned a little bit, but Agile, started in the software development industry, where Lean started in the manufacturing industry. So very different decades and even, I think, centuries of when it was established. So thank you for confirming that it was 2001, because that definitely puts it in a different century from Lean Six Sigma back in the manufacturing days. And but I guess despite the very different early days, they really do kind of come together when it comes to an area of focus. So we're looking at, from an Agile perspective, the flexibility with that rapid adaptation, and then with high customer collaboration, where Lean is on that high end of quality with low waste. So in a lot of ways, they're very hyper-focused on delivering quality to the customer, even if they have different ways of getting there. So Ivan, you want to cover what it means to succeed?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Sarah. So yeah, how it succeeds. So talking about Agile, once again, it's less formal, very adaptive to ensure resource autonomy with ongoing feedback. So yeah, that kind of sums it up all until this point. I wouldn't add anything to that. And on the right-hand side, on Lean Six Sigma, we have, as Sarah already mentioned a couple of times, methodical and structured approach for stability and predictability. So once again, we believe mixing these approaches, you can then tackle. You can somehow, from a wider perspective, or how should I say, you can tackle different problems. And I've seen there is a question, and we have actually a Q&A slide in one slide, so we'll probably just for Frederick, we'll come back to that one. And make it happen. The last point here, once again, small interactive steps with quick feedback loops. We keep on saying that, but that is really what it is. And continue. We have for Lean Six Sigma here, continuous data-driven flow to add value. So underlying here, really this data-driven part, as already mentioned earlier. I think for this slide, I wouldn't add too much unless you want to add something, Sarah. We can directly jump to the next one.
All right. So when we talk about these two frameworks in partnership with each other. We found this really great diagram from Gartner, who I think it's safe to say are kind of the best in class when it comes to putting out recommendations and kind of the top ways of working and things of that nature. We couldn't, they've done it best here. So just going to kind of talk through this as it relates to lean and agile and kind of our approach here. So when a customer comes to us with a challenge or a problem or a question, regardless of the framework, we're starting with trying to understand and empathize, define what that issue really is. And Agile gives us that fast delivery cycle, which, you can see in the gray circle on the far right. It's that kind of regular cadence that we all know and love. But it's when we bring in the lean concept here in the center, you can see the small gray iteration kind of loops inside the blue loop. So when we're starting to blend, or are considering blending the two together, we really are, I guess, trying to do it in a way that we're absolutely not trying to slow down the Agile group, but find a good blend in that. And there is a lot of overlap. So Agile brings the speed, the fast delivery, and the adaptation to change. So bringing in that rapid feedback and iterating all the way around in that kind of lean startup center bubble. But then lean brings to the table the quality, the process stability, and the structure, where we're making decisions on what to iterate on, what to experiment on, what learnings are more important than others based on data. Doesn't mean that feelings aren't important, because right up front, we're empathizing with the customer to better understand their problem. But it's more about using the data to decide which improvement is going to be the one we go with, or what data is going to mean how we're leveraging data on how we're going to prioritize our backlog, something of that nature, versus this is our stakeholder that's the loudest, or this is the stakeholder that is the most challenging per se. We're going back to the business value and what the data is telling us, not always what it might 100% make the stakeholder happy. So there's a balance there. But it's the integration of these two that we which led us to include this diagram, is because this is really where those DMAIC phases that we've talked through can kind of map and be a little bit more seamless into the Agile cadences and ceremonies. Where define from a Lean Six Sigma perspective aligns with your Sprint Zero and your initial conversations on the Agile side of the house. Analyze on the Lean side kind of flows nicely with the ideate light bulb here at the top in the first design thinking phase. And then we also have improve, which aligns pretty nicely to experimenting and learn from that center cycle. And then control gives us the retrospectives, the sprint review, and allows us to kind of monitor and get that internal feedback. So Ivan, I'll turn it over to you for any additional.
Yeah, I'll just, yes, thanks. I love this diagram, by the way. So it nicely represents our idea, and I love how it flows really from as I like to define it. It says design thinking finds the right problem. Then we are completely on the left, right. Then lean startup proves the right solution. Then we are in the middle part, right. And then we have agile that scales delivery of that solution. So that's somehow this flow I really love. And I was we were discussing, and I was always a bit unsure how I see see this picture, and I was always wondering if in this middle circle we can maybe iterate not only when building, but actually through all those other phases. But of course, nothing is written in stone, as they say in Germany, or you can say like that even in English, because you can apply it however works best for you, right? But I love this part also here, that with build, it goes through to this regular agile cadence, which is let us just quickly with product backlog, sprint planning. Then we have execution, and then once again, of course, increment, shippable increment, and then sprint review. So just because we didn't talk in other slides, about these stages, and these are quite standard phases or stages, whatever framework you choose. Yeah, that would be it, I think, for now. Then we can finally, I promise we jump to Q&A, but it was not sure, was it previous slide or this one? The question is, actually, Frederick had one more question. Some advice on building good teams to implement projects based on these principles. We can direct start with it, Sarah, but I think with our next 2 or even 3 slides. So we have next 3 slides are real use case for Agile, real use case for Lean, and then we have the human side. And I think these three actually already will answer this question. Or Sarah, if you want to add, I don't know, or yeah, how do
Yeah,
you see it?
I think the only, I mean, maybe one piece of advice I'd give off the top, which we kind of talk about this in a couple slides, but one thing that I think I find very valuable in both Agile projects and Lean Six Sigma projects is a cross-functional team. And it's the individuals that have a more traditional role or traditional background in the project scope, but that are absolutely helpful. But it's also the individuals that don't have that expertise. The diversity of thought in project teams, I think, can add a lot of value, because you're going to have people that are asking questions that the team who's been embedded in the data and embedded in the process for months, years, decades don't think about anymore, because that's the only way they've ever known. And part of the joys of Agile and improvement and Lean and all these things is challenging the status quo. So as someone who, I mean, I have an art background, I have a photography background. I've not worked my entire career in IT or healthcare. So I'm usually the one that's more on the outside looking in and kind of consulting on projects and offering the, maybe the dissenting opinion in a lot of ways. But I think having that cross-functional team approach is maybe the first big thing that could be done to improve. Just invite new voices to the conversation.
I love that, Sarah. I can sign that. And yeah, and maybe I'll add to this what means this cross-functional team in Scrum specifically. If we go by the book, once again, we choose for the Scrum. It can be different framework, but I personally don't have issues with Scrum. A good team is built of, so of course, developers. We have product owners. We have in best case, I've worked with a lot of teams that do not have QA person, so QA expert or QA engineer, but I think this is essential for good quality. So developers, QA, product owners, and Scrum Master, of course. In this case, if we go with Scrum, that's already a good start. And I think it's more about, and I keep on saying this, it's more about mindset. It's more about talking about agile mindset than blindly following rules, right? Because that's agile at core, right? So, but that is a team to start with. And if I would need to choose a framework, the easy framework with its ceremonies is of course Scrum. And especially for a new team to Agile. So once again, if we're not going now to what I call hardcore Agile, hardcore / Silicon Valley Agile, I would definitely start with something like this. And of course, this Agile mindset, of course, ceremonies and building the team and so on can last whatever amount of time. But of course, having this mindset, this doesn't happen from today till tomorrow, right? So this comes then. Also, Sarah's favorite topic about change management, and also mindset management, if you will, which is quite important and which I find quite quite important once again. And I think I believe we have to move forward. And I hope, Frederick, with the next 3 slides, once again, we have some real world cases. It's going to be even clearer, more clear. Yeah. So let's talk about, I picked one example where, to be honest, once I was doing this, I wasn't even aware that in first steps of my project, I was actually using Lean Six Sigma concepts that are out there, but uh, now by knowing them and their definition, it's even for next project, it will help me even more. So what was the issue here? We had so we are talking here about real system ERP system, and more specific about Dynamics 365 Business Central, like small or medium business ERP system um, that was having enormous performance issues. Like I have never seen a so unperformant system in my 15 years. So it was really, if I may say, horrible for the users. And peak hours were super slow, blocked SQL sessions all around. These job queues concept. This is the like automatic scheduled jobs in Business Central were failing every other hour. It was really a nightmare, if I may say. Um, and then I promised to myself and to the team and to my boss even, we will solve it. I couldn't work and work like this. That was really unacceptable. And that is now where we come to how I even with partially in not knowing how I managed to implement um, parts of the make, so parts of this definition, measuring, analysis, and then coming finally to improving the system, where we in this case see Agile jumping in, and then as the last step, control that Sarah was mentioning earlier. So we sat together and tried to identify and frame the problem. So we identified back then like 4 to 5 biggest issues that were causing almost daily incidents. It was really unimaginable. So, and that is where we are in defining phase, right? Then comes the phase of measuring. So we did this on the fly without once again strictly following this, but it was really like this. Like measuring part was meaning make the pain measurable, right? So all these 4 or 5 um, main bottlenecks or impediments, or however you want to call it, we try to measure them and also prioritize them a bit, and then decide what are the quick wins and what are the eat the frog ones, the monsters. You know what I'm talking about. A bit using also Eisenhower matrix. Um, we try to yeah, simply prioritize them and put some numbers to it. And once the next step was analysis and trying to, and also a bit Sarah, we didn't mention this approach or this method of asking for excuse me 5 whys, right? Asking for a certain problem 5 times in a row why, and then you give an answer, and then you ask, yeah, but why is that? And then once again, and then third and fourth and fifth time. So just to come to root cause, like not what I see a lot of time with the engineers and engineering teams. There is too much. There is no this systems thinking and this bigger picture approach, right? It's not. These 5 whys are missing, right? We are always, or they are always focusing on pressing the button, fixing the thing, and the thing comes tomorrow again, and no one thinks about, hey, isn't it better to fix the root cause, and then we don't have to press this button every other day again, right? Um, so coming back, that was the analysis, and then came the fourth stage about improving or actually fixing fixing the thing, right? And then we did that in small reversible hypothesis driven changes in short cycles. So this is where Agile came in. But please keep in mind that in this case, I'm not talking about regular Scrum cadence where we are building a new feature and then we go through all these ceremonies that I talked about in the previous slide, right? This was this was a bit this is a bit different agile implementation for this specific case, where we tried to go from firefighting to let's say normally working. So I just want to underline that when we talk about agile, talking about building new features and so on, that's the story is a bit different. I just wanna underline that, right? So once again, I talked about the short cycles, isolating, reporting, targeted indexes. We split these job queues and remove noise diagnostics. So really step by step, really in really short feedback loops, tried to tackle these five really bad guys one by one. And what is important, we kept only what moves the baseline really, and then we came to the fifth stage where with using different tools like CheckMK and Sentry, we build up different dashboards and alerting systems. So even though the result was really astonishing, and I mentioned this here, we managed to go from something like 20 huge incidents per week to only 2 or 3. So if we count this in percentage, that's amazing number, and I'm really proud of that, and that was really a game changer for this team. But since we have to move a bit faster, I will wrap it up here. So once again, underlying for at least for agile principles, empiricism, small batches, and fast feedback. But once again, to define and analyze and be data driven, it's really nice to have in mind both approaches and have preparations with data driven, with Lean Six Sigma standards, and then having these smaller, as we saw, as we have seen in the other picture, smaller iterations within a big circle. That really helped in this case, and I truly believe it can help in a lot of other cases. Yeah, with this, Sarah, back to you.
All right, cool. So the workflow optimization use case that I'll roll through real quick, this was more on the flip side of the framework. So this actually was intentionally started as a lean project. So we were using this project essentially as a broad way to teach a larger group in the organization what lean was, what the DMAIC processes were, and the project that I worked on and the process that I was working on to improve was one of many in this kind of bigger group. With Frederick's question earlier, brought up, the cross-departmental, cross-functional team was really important to make sure that we covered all of the bases. We had representation from different personas, different users, different groups across the organization that were influential or important to the process, whether it was directly or indirectly, to make sure that we really got as much of the real-time feedback as necessary and had everyone's voices be heard across the project. So we defined first and foremost, we defined our challenge, which was really how we could implement and improve a new electronic enrollment platform and pathway that we had in the healthcare payer that I worked for at the time. And we were going from zero to anything. So it was a brand new platform. It was nowhere where to go but up, which was great. But it also presented itself with a big challenge because there was a lot riding on this from a financial and people investment by the organization. So the measurement to some degree was pretty easy. We could, zero was where we were starting. But we also knew that there was more of a financial impact here with this project that needed to be measured, which was the people aspect. So we had bubble staff, we had temporary staff that were doing the old school manual process that the organization wanted to move away from and invest in this electronic process versus people, which would only get more and more expensive the higher the volume of transactions, as the volume transaction went up. So it was really important to get a stable, easy, flat cost process in place that didn't necessarily have as much financial fluidity as a group of people or a person would have. We also needed to reduce our financial risk from a government perspective on with CMS, from a timeliness perspective, if we were late in processing things or there was egregious errors, which by humans rekeying as part of a manual process was inevitable to happen. So there was a big cost avoidance kind of angle to this as well. When we got into the analyze phase, again, we were starting with nothing, but we looked at the manual process and the root causes with issues that resulted from that, which was lagging task queues, zero automation, and what little automation existed, it was, faxes being imaged and sent via email and rekeyed by a human into, might as well have been written in DOS like application. So it was very rudimentary. It was really messy and incredibly cumbersome given the bottom line P&L impact that this business had to the organization. So it was very easy for us to move into the improve phase, knowing that there was nowhere else to go but up. But we still needed to kind of balance what our users needed, our sales agents needed with what our operations team needed. And then also that fiscal responsibility of just making sure we could balance the budget, essentially, that our electronic solution didn't cost more over the lifetime of the people that we were essentially replacing or optimizing. And what we ended up doing was actually contracting with a vendor to support this, who were experts in this field and could come in and offer a SaaS solution that we could configure and handled really the nuts and bolts and the uptime. So we didn't have to deal with some of the challenges that Ivan mentioned in his use case because the vendor did that. But we saw an 80% lift in year one and then moved up to 92% in year two. And over the course of the decade or so that I was involved in that system, we made incremental improvements over the years when we can. So we implemented, whether it was a configuration change to make the users it easier for the users to log in, or it was more of an internal daily alert that we had from a control perspective when batch process files failed or succeeded. So we could see in real time when things were happening or not happening as we expected. And in partnership with IT, it really became a quality process over the years. And while our broad SIPOC only had some big iteration steps that thankfully didn't happen every year, it's hard to believe, back before this process existed, what our agents and what our operations team had to go through to manually deal with this stuff. So over time, it's you get into more of the nuances of user engagement and how to improve those sorts of things. And we got really in the weeds when it came to improving those sorts of things where it was rewards or kudos or retraining and coaching. And sometimes the wins are big sweeping things, but then over time, it's a very good thing from a lean perspective if you start to get into the weeds on improvements, because that means that you've really tackled those big improvements like we've talked about so far. So our human kind of side here that we'll talk through as we start to wrap up our time together. And we've touched on these things, so we're just kind of packaging it up in a hopefully a nice bow for everybody. But team culture is really important when it comes to whether it's lean or agile, and a blend of those foundational practices. These strong team environments is where lean and agile can thrive, whether they're together or separate. And building that foundation of trust with psychological safety for your teams, whether they're new team members that are just starting to learn and work together and learn from each other, or they're a team that have been working together for a long time. If you're building that space of psychological safety, you're going to further improve the ability for that team to innovate, because they're going to have that trust and be able to openly collaborate with each other. Where Agile emphasizes adaptability and feedback, lean is leaning, no pun intended, on data and precision, and bridging the differences between those two. As a manager of individuals, as a Scrum leader, as a lean black belt kind of organizer here, you need to be able to bridge the framework mindsets, not knowing where your team members might be coming from, or they just have different ways of working, and bridging those cultural mindsets, whether it's, culture in the more traditional sense where, Ivan's from Berlin and I'm from Philly, two very different cultural mindsets, or more in the sense of our talk today with lean and agile.
Yes, yes, definitely. And the last point on this slide is leadership and collaboration. So once again, this goes without a question, right? I mean, with Agile or without it, with Lean Six Sigma or without it, that's how you build strong teams, right? In any case. And yes, we are wrapping up slowly. So active listening, feedback, cross-functional. We mentioned all these things, so we will have to jump forward. The thing we mentioned most of these things, and that we quickly need to go through them. Doesn't mean they are not important, but we slowly have to wrap it up. Correct?
Yeah, we're just at time.
That
So
is,
these are kind of three big takeaways. I think we talked about them enough at this point. I guess I will skip ahead to, I guess,
yes,
if there's
I would
any
just
last
add to this,
questions.
Sarah. Excuse me. I just as a bonus, we had one slide for
Yeah.
blending in AI because you don't have to show it. You can jump
Okay.
forward. I just wanted to add what is the presentation without AI nowadays. But this can be a nice bonus thing if you follow us in our next session, and so we will talk about it. But since today we don't have time, we will really need to wrap it up. Correct?
I will take you on that, Ivan. And so we are going to wait from you guys a session where you blend AI into into this agile and Lean Six Sigma methodologies, because people would be to see what will come up out of that mix. It's definitely going to be interesting to hear that from you. But I want to say big thank you for bringing some actual use cases from real world, well, where you showed that how this agility and discipline help to help resolve the customer issues in a way that without that data, without that framework in place, it would be really a chaos and hard to get into the point where customers trying to deliver the services. So it was really interesting, engaging, and we have QR codes here. So what are these QR codes? Can you give a little bit information on the slides?
Yeah, this is just our contact info. So if you have any questions, you want to reach out, you're welcome to connect with us. And we're happy to answer questions and kick those ideas around so that you can use Agile and Lean as efficiently as you can.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much. I saw there were a couple questions from Frederick that you addressed during the presentation. We stopped there, and here's a great compliment from Frederick to both of you. It's a great presentation, indeed it is. So no doubts about that. And we also had some comments from 3S approach, but no more questions coming from that user. Again, I'm pretty sure the our audience, Cloud, Lunch and Learn, whoever is going to watch this later on to our YouTube channel, will be really amazed with the quality of presentation and all those points and key takeaways that you presented for both frameworks. And again, even I'm also very interested to hear about that AI blend into the agile and plus, even though it's just one slide, if you can expand
We'll have
that,
to come
it
back and
will
do an
be
encore.
interesting. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we're really looking forward for that. Without any overdue, I want to say big thank you to viewers who are going to watch it later on, and as well as the people who joined us online, and as well as big thank you for you for making this session engaging, dynamic, and as well as interesting, because you addressed this from different perspective, including real world examples.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
having us.
Pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too.